sorry, I'm tired from work, but
Let's go. Is that Reagan all the way?
Hold on. Ilhan Omar. What the fuck is happening with her? What's going on with my favorite squad member? DOJ is investigating Rep. Ilhan Omar. It certainly seems to be like something fishy.
In the back, Daily Caller. There we go. Okay. I figured out finally how this seating chart works.
I want to ask you about the
Yeah, press secretary fired, by the way.
Anti-fraud task force. You previously mentioned that Ilhan Omar seemed to have committed immigration fraud. Do you anticipate an indictment against her, an indictment related to that situation?
Yeah, so Reagan, I don't want to prejudge an investigation. I mean, you read the things about Ilhan Omar and about, who she
And she's brown. And you hate her.
married and whether she didn't marry this person or that person.
God, you're such a piece of shit, dude. You have zero sauce. That was so boring. That was such a boring insult. Trump would just call her brown.
Certainly seems like something fishy is there, but everybody's entitled to equal justice under the laws. So we're going to investigate it. We're going to take a look at it. If we think that there's a crime, we're going to prosecute that crime. And that's something the Department of Justice is looking at right now. Go ahead.
Based on what you've seen during your work on this anti-fraud task force, do you believe anything should change about our immigration
why the fuck is this so laggy? New York Post, what the fuck is your problem?
or refugee policies to stop fraud in the United States?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, one thing I'd say is that the biggest immigration fraud that existed under the Biden administration, it's not just that they
It was Trump's fraud.
let a flood of people across the southern border. That was obviously a very major problem and something I'm proud of the president for stopping. But it's also that they allowed the asylum and refugee claimant process to become totally fraudulent. And so here's what would happen, right?
You're so bad at this, dude. Oh my God. This is why when people are like, oh, JD Vance will take over. No, he can't, dude. He's so bad at this because he knows he's lying. He can't lie off the cuff like Trump.
You would take a person who, in normal cases, would just be a traditional economic immigrant. Whether you let them into the country or not, they're trying to come because they want a better job, okay? They would come into the country and say that they were fleeing persecution, and they would say that they were an asylum claimant. And then effectively what the Biden administration would do is say, okay, you're an asylee, go into the interior, coming into our country claiming to be asylum claimant.
What the fuck does this have to do with Ilhan Omar? It certainly seems like something very fishy. I'm so fucking confused. Vance was leading Trump admin anti-fraud efforts, did not get into specifics surrounding apparent investigation, adding he did not want to prejudge an investigation and things about Ilhan Omar, that she married, whether she didn't marry this person or that person. Certainly seems like something fishy is here. The announcement follows Omar's decision last month to amend her financial disclosure form, slightly reducing her reported value of her assets after initial filing drew Republican calls for investigation. Omar's original disclosure listed companies co-owned by her husband, Tim Minnett, worth between $6 million and $30 million. Jesus. You can love people so much and then they're still worth millions of dollars. The amendment filing listed couples' joint assets ranging between $18,000 and $95,000 with the valuation of minutes. Two companies updated to none. Omar's spokesperson told the Star Tribune that accounting errors created a misleading picture with far greater wealth. The congresswoman is not a millionaire. Okay, that's good. Amended filing listed the couples. Okay, I need to see the amended filing. Value of asset, none. Ross Lake Capital. Description, venture capital management. Income, 100,000 to $1 million. Tax deferred. Sorry, I'm so out of the loop about this. Co-founded services specialized in mergers and acquisitions, capital raising, deal structuring, and debt restructuring for global operators. Interesting. I don't know if I believe this. Cheer 1 after a political segment. I think we should play bingo. Maybe. But yeah, if it was just a accounting error, like that happens. Ilhan Omar's multi-million-dollar financial disclosure revision is just the latest long list of her questionable actions. She cannot escape accountability for long.
Now to the Trump administration's war on fraud, which could also come up in today's press briefing with the vice president and fraud czar, JD Vance. The convicted mastermind behind Minnesota's Feeding Our Future $250 million fraud scheme is set to be sentenced this week. The Justice Department wants Amy Bach to spend 50 years behind bars, saying that she, quote, took advantage of a once-in-a...
I mean, if it was an accountant's error, that just happens. What was the original disclosure? And granted, at the end of the day, is Trump disclosing any of his income? No. Student loans, 15 to 50,000. Credit card, 15 to 50,000. Jesus, $15,000 on a credit card is crazy.
Century global pandemic. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Emily Compagno, here with my co-host, Kayleigh McEnany, and also joining us today, Cheryl Casoni, Fox Business anchor and host of American Dream Home, Kennedy, the host of the Kennedy...
Shut the fuck up. I don't want to hear it. Here, I found the original PDF. Value of asset, 1 to 5 million. Value of asset, 5 to 25 million. That's insane. Value of Rose Lake Capital LLC. I'm gonna pull this up on my second monitor. Can we just fucking... Oh my god, Google. Shit's pissing me off, chat. I don't want to use my... I just want to use my keyboard.
Kennedy Saves the World podcast, and John Yoo,
Save the World
former law
podcast
clerk for Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General and UC Berkeley law professor. Now, the Mastermind's defense team says that she should get credit for...
Congressional financial disclosures state the Rose value between 5 and 25 million. However, there's a reported valuation represents total asset value rather than specific ownership stake held by co-owner Tim Myrna, and a company spokesperson has clarified its actual market valuation is much lower. Okay, so that's not asset value, or that's total asset value, but not individual stake. Yeah, that's completely different.
For handing over documents that helped convict her co-conspirators.
He generated under $20,000 of income from the venture. Okay, so if he's generating less than $20,000 a year from the venture, then yeah, this is like not an issue.
They're hoping for about 3 years in jail. Before she was convicted, Amy Bach told Fox News that state officials like Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison probably...
Yeah, they hate, like, this is unfortunate blunder. And it was just an accounting mistake. But Republicans will never let this go.
Knew what was going on.
You'll be hearing about this like you heard about Black Lives Matter. War on fraud, dog, that's the whole administration control plus... Kelly, I know. This is going to be like the... every Republican, like, white kid is going to be like, well, Black Lives Matter, like, had this money. Without looking at the whole picture. And the Black Lives Matter thing was a completely different situation, but that's going to follow them like this.
I have to believe that the governor's office and Keith Ellison's office were aware of this. They've said they were involved in helping the FBI. They've said they were made aware. But apparently I'm scary, so they couldn't do anything. I don't know. I have to believe they were aware. And again, if they weren't, shame on them for having a system that their lower level staff don't bring something of this level to their attention.
Now, Bach has also implicated Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar.
Don't believe Bach for a fucking second, by the way.
Whose name appeared in emails and texts during her trial. Bach tells the New York Post that she, quote, struggles to believe that Omar didn't know what was happening in her district. She told Fox something similar. Watch.
I don't know what she knew. I don't know. I know that I was duped by a number of people. We also have seen videos of Safari Restaurant giving out thousands of meals, pallets and pallets of food being distributed. Was there fraud? According to the DOJ and the FBI, yes. According to the jury verdict, yes. But how much? And why don't we know that? There's just so many holes and gaps in these cases. Ilhan Omar visited those sites. Why didn't the FBI?
John Yoo, I feel like rarely do we get so many statements coming out of a defendant's mouth, right? And this is really interesting that she's essentially saying she's part of the prosecution's case against the whole institution writ large, which is new or should have known. But here it seems like there's a lot of known. What is your take on both sides of this issue here that she faces in court?
For sure, she's trying to get a lower sentence, so she's trying to cooperate with the government. And the prosecutor...
And lying about it. She doesn't want to go to prison, so she's lying about it to appease the Trump administration.
Could be taking advantage of this to see if this is a broader conspiracy. It seems hard to believe that $250 million were stolen by the federal government and no one else knew about it in Minneapolis. That's one. Second, as I learned on Kayleigh's show last weekend, some of this money has possibly ended up in the hands of terrorist groups in Somalia. If that's true...
Reagan's back, baby.
This is not just Medicare, Medicaid fraud. This is a counterterrorism investigation with much higher sentences and much longer time, much more money involved, much greater powers on the part of the government to
Ollie North,
investigate
baby.
and surveil. But the last and I think most important thing is...
I think I should blindly believe everything
People
Emmy says. She seems to know what she's talking about. Yes, Dan, please blindly believe everything I talk about.
The governor of Minnesota and the attorney general who are elected to protect us don't have immunity from this kind of prosecution. So I think the Justice Department should be investigating
Donald J. Trump for being implicated in the Epstein files.
Governor Walz and the attorney general to see how many times did they meet with these people? How much money did they receive in campaign donations? Did they lay off this conspiracy to allow it to move forward and benefit politically, which would make them potentially co-conspirators in a counterterrorism investigation? And they need to be held accountable, I think, not just them saying, oh, we eventually cooperated
SCP
with
Foundation.
the federal government to investigate this. Were they involved in it from the beginning?
Such great questions, because the money flow, Kaylee, indeed, it went even to Somaliland. I mean, the ability for the government thus far to trace the funds has been robust and substantial, and totally illustrates potential culpability. We've been talking about, or I've been saying that I was hoping for some.
I'm tired, boss. We have the fucking anti-crisis president. This is what we're focused on. Yeah, fraud that doesn't really happen at a minuscule scale, and also on top of this was all sparked by that dipshit moron who was going to schools that were night schools for children with parents who work night shifts. And me, like, why are there no kids?
Some type of criminal liability here, because this exceeds the standard of negligence.
He admitted he was lying, by the way.
So greatly, and there is zero
Or at least his
immunity
parents
that
did.
they can enjoy in their offices, because none of this was within the bounds of official duty capacities. This is all fraud and misconduct and breach of duties. There is nothing about this that has to do with policy.
Yes, and it's bigger than Feeding Our Futures. In fact, it goes back to 2019. That's before Feeding Our Futures, with a whistleblower report. An investigator, that investigator sounded the alarm. It was his job to investigate things like this. His entire unit sounded the alarm, saying it's a near certainty that at least a percentage of the fraud proceeds in Minnesota go overseas and are being siphoned off to one or more designated terrorist organizations. So to the point that Professor Yu's making, if I'm Tim Walz and an investigator in my government, who, by the way, his unit ended up being shut down, why? I would listen to that. I would pull him into my office. I would find out about that money.
Snowfall, I do play.
Why and
Be
how
be
is this
patient.
going
This girl has to talk about
overseas?
politics.
I agree with Professor Yu, and he presented this theory to me for the first time. That if you're aiding and abetting terrorists, this could be terrorism charge. This is a big deal. But
If you're aiding and abetting terrorists, this could be terrorism charges. First time she's ever heard, like, dude, wait, that can happen? If you aid and abet terrorists, you can be charged for terrorism?
state actors is where I'm looking at for prosecutions at this point. These fraudsters, it's like playing whack-a-mole. You hit one fraudster, another one pops up. You hit one, another pops up. You need to look at what state actors knew. And that's something immediately when I presented John Yu's legal theory to the vice president, he said, I'm going to go to DOJ. I'm going to take that there. They should be looking at this. Of course, the facts match the law. That's DOJ's call, not the executive branch's call. Nevertheless, we need to look at it. And finally, I would just say this. Gavin Newsom, too. I mean, going back to 2022, he was warned about hospice fraud. What did he do? He put a moratorium on hospice. He shut down 287 hospices, but that was over 4 years. J.D. Vance has shut down 800 hospices in 2 months. So what was Newsom doing? Why were they sitting on this
They're bragging about shutting down hospice care.
information? Why were governors enabling fraud? And I would just note Newsom hit back at J.D. Vance this weekend saying, JD's lying in the fight against fraud. We've walked the walk. You've walked the walk? Then why'd you do a fourth of the work that the Trump administration has done over a 4-year period? They have done in 60 days.
God, her looking at the camera is so fucking, like, lizard person-like. It's been throwing me off that she keeps looking back at the camera.
You're not walking the walk. You're playing catch up.
And there have been zero complaints or resistance from those 800 organizations shut down because, indeed, they were fraudulent. Now, you talked about Gavin Newsom's always over chatty response, but Governor Walz hasn't
Do people know that shutting down hospice centers is a bad thing?
responded to J.D. Vance. Now, the vice president said he hasn't heard from him at all about the fraud probe. And remember, though, the governor took credit somehow for the fraud probe and the results that were uncovered. Let's watch.
No, Tim Walz has not contacted me. I did see that he took credit when we did those 22 subpoenas that I mentioned, that the investigations that we're doing for the anti-fraud stuff in Minneapolis. Tim Walz did take credit for it, even though Tim Walz has not helped us at all. We've gotten some cooperation from local authorities, but from the governor's office, we really haven't gotten that cooperation.
So he takes credit, by the way, after he calls the journalist, however, a white supremacist. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so Tim Walz and Gavin Newsom both personally attacked Nick Shirley and doxed him.
They did not dox him. Nick Shirley is a white supremacist.
And tried to do whatever they could to get their unhinged supporters to go after him, putting his safety at risk. But what I'm most curious about, I can't stand slimy politicians. And I put Governors Walz and Newsom in that category because it's only when it has to do with self-preservation and further ascending the political ladder do they actually jump into action. Like, they're not public servants. They're personally serving their own needs and ambitions. And, Tim Walz...
I do agree with her when it comes to Newsom. Like, straight up just agree with this with Newsom. Tim Walz is, like, so weak, unfortunately. And it really disappointed me how weakly he responded to this. The fact that he backed down and just, like, gave them the win it frustrated the fuck out of me.
And we've heard this from whistleblowers. He and his office were shutting down anyone who was bringing the fraud to the attention of the state government. And there were plenty of people who were like, this is not right. There were those of us covering some of the PPP loans in real time during COVID saying, this is ripe for corruption. There are plenty of people out here because these are vetted so flimsily that they're going to take advantage of this. And it's very interesting that the Congresswoman...
Yeah, PPP loans were crazy. People were able to get those left and right. I'm not going to lie. And it was a good thing for most people. But businesses were able to make, hundreds of PPE loans and get away with so much fraud.
Ilhan Omar, she was the one who authored and pushed the Meals Act in 2020, which allowed for a way lower threshold of, trying to figure out and codify who was getting.
By the way,
the
Meals Act is maintaining essential access to lunch for students. That's what they're upset about. Well, bye at the goon. See you later, Snowfall.
From the federal government to give out meals to kids and families in need. So they didn't have to have any verification after her federal legislation.
Yes, children should eat for free.
So it's I would also like to know from her, when did this become your pet project?
I was on this show.
They hate when kids eat for free.
In the middle of the pandemic from my home studio when we were all at home, when I got the alert that my identity had been stolen for a PPP loan fraud. It was absolutely rampant. Now, Cheryl Kennedy talked about Ilhan Omar, and let's talk about her disclosure forms, her financial disclosure forms for a second. We're going to pull up that information
Overwatch?
So that we can
Does it say I'm on Overwatch right now? It shouldn't.
From you the analysis of her economics. Here's the breakdown of her 2024 financial.
Yes, because this is actually what she makes.
Disclosure.
This is what she makes. This is not what she makes. There was an accounting error. This happens with accounting errors.
It went from an estimate between $6 and $30 million, way down somewhere between $18,000 and $95,000 when a lot of eyebrows were raised about how much she had. And look,
it was revised before she was questioned about it, by the way.
You have to wonder, we're just alleging here, we're just brainstorming, the nexus between changing her mind about the threshold of the financial disclosure and all of a sudden being a multi-millionaire. I guess you have to get to Congress first before you can get rich.
Yeah, you mean they shouldn't be trading stocks? That's a whole other conversation.
Motherfucker, you benefit from this.
But, a couple of things here.
Yes, nobody in Congress should have any right to any sort of stock. And their assets should be diluted into public wealth. If you get elected as president, none of your money should be able to go to your family. All of it. Only Republicans can trade stocks. True. Dude, I straight up believe this. If you get elected for president or any government position, the government pays for your housing and stuff. All your assets should be immediately taxed, at 100% tax rate. You should have no access to your, barring a few exceptions, your liquid wealth, gone. You don't deserve that. Why would you need it?
Things that I love that J.D. Vance said, the vice president. He said, look, he goes, my family back in the day, we needed these programs. These programs are people in need that actually need food through SNAP. They need hospice care. They need
SNAP,
funding through Medicaid. They're getting lost.
SNAP, Medicaid, and hospice, which you guys are cutting.
All this, and I think that's heartbreaking. At the same time, John, you mentioned the $250 million. It's looking like it's in the billions. You need a forensic accountant to go through to try to trace all the money. There are ways to do it. Some of the things that they have found, and this is first from Feeding Our Future. Okay, you inflate attendance sheets for meal distribution, fake invoices, fake food purchase receipts, multiple businesses. You talked about that with the vice president. You shut those down. That's one thing. The autism services. There are people that do need autism services, but this is money that's taken right out of Medicaid, fake signatures, therapy never delivered, kickbacks that were being given out to certain families. The fraud, but you can use technology and you can't, again, use forensic accounting to get to that money. The problem with it, and we've been asked this on the Business Network, can we get the money back? Can the American taxpayer recover a clawback of what has been lost in Minnesota? Likely no, because most of that money
I want to ask these people to their face, okay, but like how much money, taxpayer money, is being used in the war in Iran that's causing gas prices to shoot up?
Money, if it wasn't put on in bags of cash on planes back to Somalia, which there is, of course, reporting on.
Back to Somalia, baby. Think we should start a president with the normal middle class stuff, then depending on how they do, they either get stuff taken or gain more. True, Dan! They should be given the bare minimum to live, and if people start liking them, they get paid a little bit more. If people don't like them, they start losing that shit. You're going from full fat milk to 2%, bitch.
On that, unfortunately, it's been moved over to crypto and property, African property. So
they hate African property. They hate Africans. God, dude, Fox News is just a complete clusterfuck of morons. Like genuine evil people. Never forget that these people will just lie to you nonstop for their own personal profit. All these people benefited from Inside Trader. What's an African? What do you mean, what's an African?